Discussion over, huh?
Yeah, well, they always say, well, you know what it was.
So good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Economic Growth and Development Committee meeting to order. I think we have a quorum. Should we do a roll call? I'd like to do a roll call, Amanda, if you don't mind.
Certainly. Mr. Weil,
I'm here.
Mr. McDevitt,
Here.
Ms. Hogan. Don't see her on YouTube. Mr. Stroud,
Yeah,
Mr. Leggett. See Mr. Leggett's screen on Zoom. Mrs. Frazier,
Here,
Gowan,
here.
quorum is present.
Thank you very much. Motion to approve the minutes of the prior meeting. Can I have a motion? This is
Motion.
Supervisor Strauss, Supervisor McDevitt. Any revisions or changes? All those in favor say aye.
aye,
Abstain.
Abstain. So that passes. First order of business, it's my pleasure to host Mayor Collins from Glens Falls. He has a couple of guests with him. He's asked to present some ideas and efforts that's on our way at the city to the committee. So without objection, I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Bill Collins.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to thank Ryan Moore and Kevin Garrity for asking this subject to be taken up by this committee. With me today is Scott Sopchik, the city's transportation director for Greater Glens Falls Transit, and also Carm Basil CEO from Capital District Transportation Authority. We came here today to inform your committee and hopefully the entire Warren County Board of Supervisors that the city of Glens Falls has asked the CDTA to consider expanding its services to Warren and Washington counties. In exploring this potential merger of these two transportation authorities, the city of Glens Falls is looking to bring the entire Capital District closer to the city and the North Country in a very real and concrete way. Imagine the workforce, community members, all throughout Albany, Rensselaer, Schenectady, Saratoga, and eventually Montgomery counties, being able to, for the first time ever, to take a bus to Glens Falls, Queensbury, and Lake George on a daily basis. These conversations are in their infancy, and we wish to discuss our thinking and the possibilities with you, the entire Board of Supervisors. We hope that you'd be excited about this opportunity as we are. I'll let Scott and Carm discuss the details regarding this. I've got a handout for you that I'll pass along. And then when there's going to be a question about next steps, and there is a way right now that all the local communities contribute a very small portion of the local share of support for the Greater Glens Falls Transit. If the county sees the value in this that the city of Glens Falls does, that local support, the way it's achieved would change. And I'd like to discuss it with you, but first the possibilities, and then we could get to those changes that would be necessary if the county was to take advantage. Okay, so I'll turn this over. I'm going to pass this out to you, to all of you, and introduce Scott Sopchik.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you all know me. I know at least 3 of you have served on our advisory committee, either currently or in the past. So I know there's some good familiarity with what Greater Glens Falls Transit is and some of its history. But just a quick overview, Greater Glens Falls Transit was formed in 1984 when the Glens Falls became considered urban by the U.S. Census, and as such became eligible for some federal funding. And when it was formed, it was done as because Glens Falls is a little unique in that the Glens Falls urban area spans portions of 3 counties. So it was developed and organized in a way by Mayor Bartholomew at the time so that it incorporated portions of Warren, Washington, and northern Saratoga County. That did that. The major player in that, the biggest piece of that was the Warren County piece, and the city took the lead. Back in 1984, the system started with 6 buses. Since then, it's grown to 18. It's grown a lot. The trolleys have been added on. We've added paratransit service for persons with disabilities. But from 1984 to 2022 is a long time. The world has changed. Many things have changed. And when the city was organized, it made sense. And there were many systems around the state that were small city systems. You had the city of Ithaca, you had the city of Utica, you had the city of Poughkeepsie, and others around the state that operated independently. Since that time, many of those have either been absorbed into counties or into authorities. Some have gone into joined with Rochester Regional Transportation Authority, some with Syracuse, some with Albany. And the reasons for that evolving, the complexity of everything has changed. Everything from the maintenance of buses, the technology that exists on buses, the technology that's available for public transit systems, whether it's fare collection, whether it's passenger information, whether it's dispatching. There are many layers, many forms of technology that have expanded that are all valuable and they all serve a purpose, but they all take manpower and expertise. And the depth of manpower and expertise is difficult for a small operation. You know, the system started in 1984 and it hit this, basically its management staff was 4 people. We've expanded by 1 to 5 over that time. We really don't have the capacity to have our own IT. And maintenance, is the world has changed in maintenance from what the buses were like in 1984 to what they are now. The technology, the electronics, the world has changed, as it is with everything else, as I'm sure everyone understands. And I've been looking at where does the system go from here? Because there is a value to public transit in Warren County, Washington County, and the whole region. Mobility is important. It's growing. We're looking at the issues of environmental issues, economic issues. There's a whole host of issues why transit is relevant, and it's important to maintain it as an option, whether it's transit, walking, bicycling, any other non-single occupant form of automobile. So looking there going forward, recognizing I'm not going to be in this job forever. How can I go forward, finding the staff ready to do it? Looked at a number of options for at least the last 5 years. And most recently had started conversations with CDTA. We started looking with bikes. I've had contacts and colleagues at CDTA throughout my time working with the counties. And at this point, through those conversations, I think it makes sense to explore what it might look like for a merger for CDTA to come north and take over the operation of transit services in Warren County. There's interest in it. There's a thought. There's a lot of details to be discussed, a lot of details that would need to be worked out. But at this point, we're here making people aware that we're having those discussions. And we want to begin to progress what is the right next step to explore, to answer those questions, to do it properly, so that there's a benefit across the board for not only for the city of Glens Falls, for Greater Glens Falls Transit, but for the business community, for the residents, for the tourists, all the people that make use. They have needs of mobility and transportation in this area. Be happy to answer in more detail as you want, but at this point, just turn it over to Carm to say a few more words. Maybe.
Thanks, Scott. I think Scott encapsulated the discussion. Really not a complicated process of merging the two organizations. However, devil's in the details, right? Let me just give you maybe a couple of minutes about CDTA if you're not familiar with us and who we are.
Talk up a little more.
Sure. Based in Albany, but we currently serve 4 counties: Albany, Rensselaer, Saratoga, and Schenectady. Those counties have been part of our organization since we were created in 1971. We're a creature of the state. We're a public authority created by the state of New York. I report to a board of directors who are appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate. You're probably familiar with how public authorities operate. We are in the process right now of adding a 5th member, Montgomery County. We'll begin service in Amsterdam and the surrounding communities right around Labor Day. Relatively speaking, compared to the Glens Falls Transit District, we're a large employer. We employ about 750 people. That is growing. But I was overhearing a conversation about a new world, and boy, is it. We're finding people to hire, but retention is an elusive topic. People don't stay in one place anymore. So it's been very, very difficult for us to find bus operators and qualified technicians. That's something that's really changed. Scott talked about that. They used to be called mechanics. They're not mechanics anymore. They're technicians. I walk into our garages and look at laptops open by the sides of buses and see technicians spending most of their time looking at the laptop, not looking at the bus to diagnose a problem. But we, as I said, right now we're in 4 counties. We'll be 5 soon. 750 people work at CDTA. Before the pandemic, our ridership totaled about 16 million boardings a year. After during the pandemic, we dropped significantly, but we're back up. We'll probably be back around 12.5 million by the end of this year. Lots of things that we do besides buses. We have our own trolley service like Scott talked about. Actually, we've helped Scott run trolleys last summer, and we're going to help him with manpower again this year. We recently introduced our bike program. Actually, Liza reminded me that it was 1 year ago today that several of us in this room sort of cut the ribbon on bikes in Glens Falls and Lake George. We are introducing an electric scooter program. We're testing it actually. Some people either love them or hate them, I guess. Some people love them, some people hate them. But scooters are another form of mobility. We have a new program called Flex, which is sort of a on-demand service. You pop it up on your mobile phone through a mobile app, and you order your ride. Very small scale program right now that we're piloting. We will this summer introduce our own car share program. We have 10 small electric vehicles that we're going to place mainly in Albany and try that program. That's sort of our calling card. We are always looking and trying new mobility options. But I got to tell you, I've been at CDTA for more than 40 years. I've spent my whole adult life there. The notion of connecting Warren County, Washington County, Saratoga County, and then South Albany County has been a long discussed issue. I think the time is right. I think those connections are important. I think we can bring more economic opportunity to this part of the capital region. We are not a savior, but if I had to tip our hat, we have a very, very strong staff, an innovative staff, outreach oriented or community driven. We want to be part of the community in anything we do. So I think you'll see that as our calling card. But as Scott said, lots of details to work out how that would all work, how the membership in the authority would work. But in the early stages of conversation, the mayor suggested we come to Warren County and talk to you. And that's what we're doing. A lot of questions that we don't have answers to yet, but we wanted to be here sooner than later.
Mr. Mayor, all set?
Yeah, I just, when Scott, when I took office, one of the first things that Scott and I talked about was this opportunity for Glens Falls, and I believe for Warren County. This is about resources. Like Carm referred to just a moment ago, hiring people at GGFT. We're such a small transportation organization that hiring people, especially the summer help that we need so much, and Tide, Glens Falls, Hudson Falls, Fort Edward to Queensbury to Lake George is a huge priority for us and a huge challenge. And those resources, things like rideshare, the technology, they mentioned the buses, but think about the card technology that allows an organization to get passes for students. These are things that GGFT has not been able to afford and probably would not be able to afford. We would not have, if we're being honest, we would not have the bike share program if it wasn't for CDTA. Not because we wouldn't want it, not because it wasn't a huge value. And the people in Glens Falls and Lake George took huge advantage of it. Our numbers were extremely strong for a first year program. But those opportunities would not have been available. We simply couldn't have covered the overhead, the startup cost that wouldn't have been able to be possible alone. So that is it's those opportunities that we're talking about that, I just keep seeing endless. The fact right now is that somebody cannot hop on a bus in Saratoga and be in Lake George or Glens Falls in the afternoon. We stop at Moreau and they stop in Saratoga just above Moreau. Right. And so you can't it's the land of no return. Right. This eliminates that barrier. That is a huge barrier or a huge resource for us. One that we fully wish to exploit. So there's two things that I can see that are concerns, just so you know, are potential barriers, which we don't think are insurmountable by any means. One is the city of Glens Falls will lose control over time. This would, city of Glens Falls, GGFT would become part of CDTA. And so therefore, we would have a person on CARM's board, but we'd have no more weight than Albany or Saratoga County or Schenectady. So that's a big difference, right? Right now, if we have a huge need, special need, I call Scott. Quite often though, Scott's answer is, I'd love to, but I don't have any more buses. And, but you know, that is something that we won't have, that lack of control. I needed to accept that to come here and speak to you. That is something that that I will have to, and the Common Council has already understood. The second one is the way that the local match. Greater Glens Falls Transit Authority, about 90% of the funding of the entire department, $2.1 million. $2.1 million is the total budget of the Greater Glens Falls Transit. 90% of that is funded through state, federal, and then local ridership, which is a small, about 12% of that 90 is the fares that we collect, right? But the rest of it is state and federal. This is very similar for CDTA. Very large portions of their budget are the state and federal, and then the ridership. So where does that last of that 10% come from? Well, in GGFT, when it was created, we went to each municipality that, so Glens Falls contributes about $60,000 towards the budget of GGFT. The town of Queensbury contributes about $80,000 of that. Lake George, less, maybe 20,000. These are rough numbers. I'm just trying to give you examples. Bolton contributes. And so that's where that local rider share comes from. But with CDTA, the way it was created, every county that wants to be in CDTA's service agreement agrees to raise the mortgage recording tax 1/4%. And that covers the local share. It's not, in the grand scheme of things, it's very little money, but it is a change. And the Warren County Board of Supervisors would need to embrace that change. And that's where the local share would come from. Those are the only two things that I can see that are even potential, I want to say discussion points, but concerns, right? Because the rest of it is all, oh my God, what a great advantage to our community, how we can bring these regions together. Now I'll let you guys ask any questions.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There are great economic and business opportunities here for our county, as I see it. Now, I'm going to open up to the committee members. Any questions? Supervisor Leggett, I understand you had your hand up. Or is your
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. And sorry not to be able to be down there to see everybody today. Maybe if we had mass transit up here, I could have made it down. This looks like a great opportunity, and Mayor Collins, thanks for bringing Carmen Scott in as well to explain this. So this linkage, we got a tourism report yesterday from some consultants, and one of the things they identified is that our region is not real attractive for some events, conventions, etc., because it's hard to get from here to there if you fly into Albany Airport. Would there be able to, and you think about student populations, hiker populations, all that we feed up here on a tourist basis, would there be linkages then all the way from, say, Albany Airport to downtown Lake George? And then form a partnership that was alluded to a little bit. So CDTA would then become the transit authority up here. Is that what that is? And what's needed from the county? Oh, and then you said something about mortgage tax, but that's a whole nother follow on. I'm feeling like Chairman Wild here with all these questions coming out at once. So.
Do you want to start with the beginning of the ridership or the routes?
Yeah, we thanks for those 17 questions. I'll try to get maybe 2 answers to you. We live on community partnerships. I can't even tell you the number of organizations that we partner with, and we have all kinds of mechanisms to partner with them. Would every one of those partnerships come to pass? Yeah, I don't know, but by having a service area that encompasses the whole region, not just parts of the region, those are where the opportunities are. I can tell you, I'm just thinking back last weekend, I think it was Tulip Fest in Albany. We shuttled visitors to and from Washington Park. If you're familiar with that, it's impossible to get in, get out. We just shuttle people back and forth. We have services from the airport to all parts of the region. We have services, local organizing committees that organize events at the Times Union Center. We're part of those groups. So yes, to all that type of thing. Specifically, the Balloon Fest, I know is a big balloon. Yeah, Balloon Fest. I remember coming up here early in the morning when my kids were little. We do things like that. That's just a regular part of who we are. As far as the mortgage tax, that's just, it's part of our enabling legislation that provides the local funding. It's a quarter, as Mayor said, 1%, probably in the grand scheme, not a large amount of money. It's really reshuffling your deck. As I understand it, there's all kinds of local shares. Each community, or not each community, a lot of communities are paying 60,000, 80,000, 70,000. You're essentially reshuffling the deck. I don't know what your mortgage tax receipts are. We would obviously bone up on that. I would suspect it's going to be less than what all the local shares are total, which might be a little bit of a concern, but we can worry about that a little later. So that's 2 out of 17.
That's good. Others have questions. Thanks so much for covering those.
Thank you.
Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you. This is really really good idea. I really like it. I remember when the bus system originally came in Glens Falls. Yes, it has expanded. I see a lot of people taking the bus from up here that go down to Ballston Spa area and that to get into Albany, vice versa. We can actually bring people up here, to bring our workforce up here, which I think is a phenomenal idea. I like the bike program. I have to say, I do have spin on my app, because when I was in Utah, I got the app just to say I rode one of those scooters around their capital in Tahoe or in Utah. So I really had a experiences. So these are the things in the growth that we really need. I like the fact that these buses are going to go up. I don't know what goes up into Warrensburg now, but we could shove people up there, Chestertown, up even further. I mean, we are in a large community. Now, I know a lot of towns contribute. My question is on the mortgage tax, that really only comes off of what is sold.
That's correct.
So, and right now on Queensbury, there's about 5 houses on the market as of this particular minute, but probably about 8 minutes, there won't be any, all right? Not like the big boom we had, but other communities share in. One of the things I look at is really, taxes. And I have properties in Glens Falls, I have properties in Queensbury. I love Queensbury because my property tax has been wicked low. There was a time we didn't have everything until John got in, and then all of a sudden we hit, no, I'm only kidding. But it eventually grows. My county tax is kind of large. But I think that this is a program that all the towns and villages will benefit from. So a stronger figure coming to what doing it. But I like the larger pool that was CTA can bring. And it's absolutely right, because we are a tourism area and we do have our spikes. Balloon Festival is a great idea. We could bus people in, that would be great. We have large parking lots that we can set up. So this is really exciting, and I appreciate the opportunity to sit in on this and to move forward. But I think it's something that we all can benefit from.
Mr. Moore first, if you don't mind. Supervisor Scott.
Sure. Just to get into the details a little bit on what we have here for the mortgage tax, our tax is $1.25 And if that represents, and that's taxed on the money that's borrowed to finance real property. And if you refinance your mortgage, it's only taxed on the new amount of money. Let me break that down. So there's 0.5% that's the basic tax. That's collected for towns and it's dispersed to the towns where the mortgage property is located. There's the additional tax, that's 0.25%, and that goes to the county. There's a local special tax, that's the one that we have to renew every couple of years. That's 0.25%, and that goes to the county. And then there's a special additional that goes to Sunny Bay. It's a New York State thing, and that's also 0.25%. So that's how you get up to the 1.25%, $1.25 per $100. The revenues that represents for the county, again, it's the quarter plus the quarter, so half. That last year we did a little over $3 million, which was well beyond what we budgeted, and this year we're doing very well as well. I spoke about it at the board meeting last week. So my question would be, we're talking about an additional 0.25%, and is that a direct? Is it like Sunny May where all of it goes into CDs?
Yep. 0.25%, the first 10, I would imagine same with yours, first 10,000 is exempt.
Okay. Yeah. So you're talking a magnitude there, if I'm understanding how it works correctly, of over $1 million, maybe $1.5 million
On a good year.
And are there any other financial schemes here? Is that basically how everyone does it?
Pretty much. I think everything else is a state and federal translation, essentially. So we receive something called state operating assistance, as does City Glens. This City Glens falls through the transit district. We would just move all that over. Federal grants, move it all over. That would be really administrative in nature.
Yeah, and one thing to that point is Glens Falls as an urbanized area, it receives an appropriation through Congress for federal transit. So that would be transferred over to Capital District, which would provide for operating and capital assistance for the transit operation.
Supervisor Stroud.
Thank you. Oh, you have Supervisor Hogan too, just so you know.
Up next, Andrea.
Well, Mayor Collins and I have talked about the advantages of this. I mean, economically tying in with the capital region works both ways. It's good for the capital region, I believe, because we have a lot of things to offer in Warren County that I think the capital region would like to take advantage of. We could use additional workforce in the summer, perhaps a time when the capital region is a little bit low. So it could have a very symbiotic relationship. And I think all that's good. The funding formula would change a little bit. I mean, it would, right now it's on Glens Falls, Queensbury, and the other municipalities that partake in this. So the funding would be federal, state, and county instead of a burden on the localities. The beauty of having the greater Glens Falls Transit is that we're attuned to and sensitive to the special needs of our area. We have the Bloom Festival, we have the Mary-Kate, we have special events on Lake George. We have special events at the Civic Center. Would we still be able to sit down at the table and talk about the needs to have transportation provided for those special events? Because right now we would call Scott and say, and actually Scott will try and accommodate us if he can. So we wouldn't want to lose that personal local touch in the bigger thing, because compared to us, Albany's so much bigger. So they would be the lion in the room and we'd be the mouse kind of, but I would like some assurances that as we go forward, that our community wouldn't get lost in the bigger picture, that our special needs would be identified and taken care of as we move. But again, I see tremendous advantages for moving in with you, and thanks, Carm, for coming.
John, the easy answer is of course, but the proof is in the pudding. And we wouldn't have a chance to prove it to you unless we give them the chance to prove it.
The way those, I'd say that's in the top 5 questions that I've been asked as we've talked about this. And so the answer is it's in the numbers, right? What kind of event are you looking at? There was somebody who asked, does this mean we could have daily trips to Gore Mountain all winter long? And so the answer, I believe, is they right now, Scott cannot try that because of a whole bunch of things. Communications not being available from here to North Creek, so that if a bus breaks down, it would be stranded there. But the bigger concern is the numbers. So where Scott couldn't try some of these things because we don't have any of the extra buses, Carm would be able to try some things, but in the end, he needs to report to his board, and it's about numbers. So if there was high ridership on Saturday mornings to Gore Mountain, and he gives it a shot, and the numbers prove out, then yes. But he's going to have to make that business decision at the beginning with Glens Falls, but eventually on his own to say, geez, driving a bus from Glens Falls or Warrensburg to the ski mountain has 5 riders a day. It's not worth it can't be sustained. So it'll all be about those kinds of things. With any transportation service, it's about the numbers, right? Events that are bigger, like the Warren County Balloon Festival, it's pretty easier to see how that would be a benefit to the area. The numbers are going to be insane. There will probably be more riders than you could possibly get buses. And that would be the answer to that. Like he said, he does it already for Tulip Fest. And so those bigger events would probably be much easier to justify.
One thing I just add too, and just in fairness to CT and Carm, just keep in mind, nothing is unlimited. Okay, but it is fair to say that whatever capacity through this is always going to be greater. What CDTA might be able to bring to the table is going to be more than what a small 18 bus operation ever could. So, just to be realistic, it's not unlimited. You need 100 buses for the Balloon Festival. Maybe that's not realistic, but it's fair to say you probably have more than what we have now. And so whatever response there is, and I don't know what that is, where that falls in the line, but the capacity is better for a whole host of things, whether it's fleet, whether it's staff, whether it's technology, whether it's expertise. There's more depth, there's more potential.
Just maybe to summarize, perhaps if you back up just a little bit, and I know special events are what people sort of gravitate to. I think you really should talk about day to day to day. Right. So, and that's where we're going to, I think, make a difference. What we'll do is take what I think is a really sharply designed, well-run local municipal system and add our list of benefits to it. Common payment platforms, information on your phone, just basically make people's ability to move around the community better. Yes, we'll do a lot of special events. Yes, we'll do a lot of partnerships, but it's the day-to-day business that I think we're best at. And it's great to come into a system that's well-run because all we can try to do is make it better. And if we get that done, I think all the special event stuff and partnership things that you're talking about, opportunities will fall into place.
Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Chairman. This is tremendous. This is great for the entire county. And I want to thank you, Mayor Collins and Scott and Carm for bringing this to committee. But I think we'd be remiss in this moment if we didn't recognize Liza Oxendorf and her advocacy for this. From the moment she stepped into her position, she started talking about the need for this connection and this work. And I think we really need to recognize her for this and her advocacy. So thank you, Liza. I don't know if you're in the room. I can't see.
Yes.
But I'm really, hi, thank you. I'm really excited about this. And I look forward to how this is going to work out for the entirety of Warren County from the north to the south. I think there's a lot of potential here, and thank you for doing the hard work of talking about it.
Thank you. Mr. Lamont.
Three, I guess, quick questions. In an ideal world, what's the time frame for this to happen? Number two, would any operations remain here? You know, there's people employed, locally. Would those jobs stay? Would they be moved? And Scott, I'm assuming then all GGFT set-asides on the tip would be transferred to the CVTA tip?
Well, that's one of the details as far as how the MPO would work, because we have our own MPO, so there would still be the MPO. I don't think that would go away, but it's just a question of who the operator is. It's how that would come in.
So, yeah, I mean.
It's not going to go down to CDTC because if the money comes from here, I think that can be worked out.
Yeah, there's federal issues there too.
Yeah, that, I mean, my concern would be making this all work in the tip.
Yeah.
So if this committee thinks this is as good idea as we do, we'd like to ask you to bring it to the full board for consideration. Meanwhile, Scott and Carmen and I will continue to meet and flush out the details of things. So what I can tell you is that the intention right now would be to help transition all GGFT employees to become CDTA employees. How the retirement, and for those who've already retired, how that's going to work, those details we don't know yet, but the intention is to seamlessly transition. And this transition would be over a period of time, a few years, right? We're not letting Scott leave right away, right? Just so you know. So, you know, it would be a slow transition, and one in which we can, Carm can learn GGFT and the system and how it runs, its strengths, its weaknesses, with no changes, right? And so that would be the goal. We'd start to explore it. And if this committee thinks again is such a good idea, we'd like I'd like you to bring it to the county supervisor. I'd love to hear what everybody has to say. Meanwhile, please let me know if there's one of you on this committee that would like to join us in those conversations. We're just going to start moving on those details, but we didn't want to get the cart in front of the horse. We wanted to talk to everybody, even though the GGFT is a department of the city of Glens Falls, right? Scott is an employee of the city, and so therefore myself and the council have to be involved. We want to make sure that the county is on board. We want to make sure if there's any of these concerns and that we can address them. Your concerns are our concerns, right? We are the city of Warren County, and Warren County is the community of Glens Falls. So we wish to work together with you as we move forward.
Thank you, gentlemen. I just have one other comment. I see a couple other questions, and we're kind of up against a wall on time here. But one of the things I'd like to share with the community is I did touch base with some in the business community, specifically in the Lake George area. And I voiced my concern about an additional tax. And I just queried a few individuals in terms of whether the business community would be interested in supporting something like this. Surprisingly, or not surprisingly, there was no pushback. There was thoughts that the business community could add some incentives to help make this happen. And Carm, I'm not sure if I've heard this or not for sure, but I think I heard that some businesses within CDTA are actually offering ridership cards to their employees, so the employees don't have to pay. And like we heard earlier, it's all about the number of riders. So it might be a way for us to help expand some of the services up here as we go forward.
You heard correctly.
Business community.
That's a pillar program. We call it Universal Access. In fact, our large corporate partners, I'll give you one example. Albany Med is probably one of our largest corporate partners. Every ID card, or where their IDs, just like you do, is live on our buses, every single one. And what we do is have a prearranged relationship. They tap on the fare box, signals good ride. It's calculated, and we bill them quarterly for those. Albany, Sienna, ShopRite supermarkets, Albany Airport, and on and on. So it's a mature program that we would bring to the county. And it's a way to incentivize people to come to work, to get to work, and incentivize their employment.
And, to add to that, because we have, and to show the difference in what this brings to the table, because we had similar programs. SUNY Adirondack, they show their ID and they can ride the bus. But without the technology, that's a totally manual process. So they'll show a valid ID with the sticker. The driver will record it. And we have Price Chopper, Hannaford, similar type things in other places as well. But what the technology brings is you have an electronic system, you have a pass system where it's all integrated. So not only will it be just GGFT, you don't have to have the driver doing a manual count. It'll all go into a system. That's the type of technology we haven't been able to fully exploit just because of our size and our scope.
So moving forward, I've heard a number of positive comments from the committee members. Are there any comments from any other supervisors? Supervisor McDevitt, I got to say we're up against the clock here, but these are all important, and I believe it's an important opportunity for us. So, Mr. McDevitt.
Just a quick question. It's probably more a financial one, Carmen. The 1/4%, if you take 1/4% of Albany County or 1/4% of Saratoga County, looking at it strictly as a function of the amount of dollars which the organization would receive from the county. If you're getting 10 times as many dollars from Albany County than say another county, the cry for services and the demand from an elected officials for a proportionate degree of services provided. So is the 1/4%, is that kind of pretty much consistent through all counties and will be good sense going forward that would remain the same?
It's built into our enabling legislation. It's built, actually, I can tell you it's identical across the I-90 corridor. So if you go west to Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, we're all 1/4%. It's all the same. So any expansion, it's a 1/4%. And that's back to, do we look at your share versus, I can tell you Saratoga's share, for example, is bigger than Albany's share. But the service in Albany is far more than it is in Saratoga. So we don't look at things that way. We just, if we're coming here to do the best job we possibly can. And basically not wreck what these guys have built.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from any of the supervisors? Supervisor Leggett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
One question though.
Well, this is an idea to you and maybe pass it on to finance, that instead of mortgage tax, because as Carmen mentioned, in a good year, on the numbers that Ryan had put out there, it might be about $1 million. That's in a good year. That fluctuates a lot. And we've seen it at the town budget time too. It's not always come in so well. What if we used a portion of the gas tax that we have for this, because it's a like item? It's regarding to transportation. We're probably in one of the binds we are right now of people mobility relative to gasoline prices and not being able to drive. Having other options like an efficient transportation system could help alleviate some of that pressure for people that need it the most. Just an idea for us to consider. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure that my guess is that CDTA would just peg our number at 1/4 of the mortgage tax, and however we decide to pay for it is how we pay for it. Any other comments? So what's the pleasure of the committee? I'm sensing we're in support of this. Anyone have reservations at this time? Any other supervisors with reservations at this time? So that's a good sign. So where would we like to go forward with this? Should we recommend someone to join this committee put on by the mayor to work through the details? Supervisor Stroud.
Well, Carm, what are you looking for? I mean, clearly this committee supports going forward. Would you like a similar resolution put before the whole board of supervisors showing their support to move forward?
Basically, what we got today is what I was looking for. We don't want to keep going down a road if there's, any degree of hesitation here. Doesn't look like there is. It would be lovely to have some sort of endorsement from the board of supervisors in general. But this, I think for us, gives us enough of a green light to keep going. Did this very similarly in Montgomery County, just less a year ago. There's a lot of logistics to work out, but this is good enough for me. Even better would be a resolution from the whole board.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, well, I'll make a motion of support and moving in the direction of looking into cooperating with the CDTA and maybe even merging. Details yet to be worked out, but I think that this is a resolution of support to move in that direction.
Help me with summarizing that.
Somebody said it's a resolution supporting moving in the direction of exploring operations in a combined nature with CDTA.
Second, Supervisor McGowan. Any discussion? We've had some. All those in favor say aye.
Chairman,
Aye. Supervisor Hogan.
thank you. Before we pass a resolution of support, I think we need to know what this, I am in support. Let me back that up. I am in support, but I think we need more information on what this means for our mortgage tax. If this is going to shift some of the mortgage tax out of every municipality in Warren County, we need to know that before we move forward. So I am in support, but I think before we pass a resolution, let's have a little more information.
Details to be worked out later. This is just a show of support to move it in the direction. Those kind of questions can be answered as we move it along.
Is that a modification to your
No, it's just staying with the original resolution.
Supervisor Hogan? I'm not sure if you heard that. Are you okay with that?
Oh, I heard it. I heard it. Thanks.
Moving forward, right? We don't know what the final details are and any kind of, I'm assuming that any kind of final agreement will have to go through the committee and full board again. So with that, let me call the questions. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
That motion carries. Gentlemen, thank you
Thank you.
and good luck. And please don't
Thanks.
hesitate.
We'll be
There's
back.
some more help you need.
Yeah, we'll come back with some details for you.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Timing?
Appreciate it.
Timing on the details?
Appreciate it.
Going to see us next month, so we should plan for another 30 minutes or 40 minutes
It would be great.
next month.
Yes, please.
We'll put you on the
Well, with
agenda.
more details, we might want to go an hour.
Thank you.
Yeah, seeing you, Bill.
Thank you all.
Next up, Mr.
Sorry,
Zipline.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Ethan, I'm sorry I didn't get to you.
It's okay.
You could have chimed in anytime.
Got nothing but glowing endorsements for CDTA.
Have clout around here.
Yeah. No, I just, I work closely with those guys in the Capital District and they provide a lot of on the ground support for even small municipalities. So,
Well, I didn't know that.
yeah, they're,
Well, next time you're not gonna sit down there at the end of the table. You're gonna come up here with the big boys, okay?
Too close, too close.
Morning, Jim.
Morning.
We looking for a couple of slides yet this morning before we get started?
They're gonna throw them up, but if you want, I can get started while they do that.
Please do.
Listen, I did not enter into the conversation you just had because it was going so well, but it's really important that you understand from the voice of the Economic Development Committee, this is one of the handful of things that is most vital for this county to move on in order for us to develop the framework for a sustainable long-term economy. The moat that has been around Warren County is not serving it right now. We have still more than 1,000 open jobs, Liza will tell you, 400 of them, either at Hudson Headwaters or at the hospital. Think about this. If that bus system could help us get half of those people, many of which are in entry-level positions where the workforce here is totally tapped out. If we could bring them here, it would be as if we built another angiodynamics in this community in terms of economic impact. There's very few things we could do that would support the long-term sustainable revenue base of this community that would deliver more value than closing that 10-mile gap with CDTA. And I will say, they don't need my help. but they have 100% of the support of the EDC as they go through. Carm and the mayor have done all this work. Eliza helped initiate it, but they are way down the road and their plan is well thought out. And they're doing all the right things in terms of touch and base, not only with you, but with the business community. And I can tell you that you mentioned the business community of Lake George. The business community of not only Warren County, but the surrounding counties is overwhelmingly in support of this. In fact, they're currently, many of them are privately supporting little tiny bus lines or transportation lines to meet their own needs. I can list 4 right now that are paying for private transport services to bring people from south of here to meet their own economic needs. So the ridership is already being demonstrated. Liza and I participated in a program last year with just a handful of tourism-related organizations in Lake George, where a private shuttle was run all summer to bring people from the Albany district into our market. That there's no question that this would deliver value. So I think you're well down the road. I think the economics of it more than pay for itself in terms of its long-term value to the community. I wanted to share with you quickly an update on where we stand from an economic standpoint. And in fact, you're going to get, would you mind just flipping through the next one? These are the 2 charts. So for those of you that are not here, you know, I'm going to talk to some of the key points for those that are in here, but for those that aren't here, it's available to you and we'll make sure it gets sent out to anybody who wants it. In the next month or so, we're going to announce the fact that we're going to provide a quarterly economic state of the economy in Warren County process here. And this scorecard that we put together, am I doing that? Sorry. With CEG down in the Capital District is the basis of it. Now, we've evolved it quite a bit. It used to be almost exclusively redundant to some of the measures that you get already from Liza that are workforce related. There are still some of those. We talk specifically about the unemployment rate and the labor force, but we've added to it more robustness, particularly with regards to the housing market, so that you can see together housing statistics together with workforce statistics. We've also added some amount of public tax collections. I'd like to expand both of those so that we're not done tinkering with the format of this. But here's some interesting things. Our unemployment rate is 4% is essentially full employment. Liza will tell you about this. There's no one who doesn't want to work in Warren County who isn't already working. But it's very interesting to see that our labor force is 31,000 people. So there's very few people sitting on the sidelines. There's 64,000 people that live in Warren County. If you take the people who are over the age of 70 and the people who are under the age of 16, pretty much everybody who could work is working. We have to get over this notion that this is a temporal problem. This is a structural problem. And in fact, this is a plug for the pitch we're going to make on June 17th at our annual meeting and continue to make all year. This is a demographic problem that has been 50 years in the making. If we don't open up the avenues to bring others in, like the CDTA question, if we don't figure out how to make childcare more accessible at the same time, if we don't look at some of the structural problems that have kept women out of the workforce, if we don't deal with the number of men that are outside the workforce because of the opioid crisis, if we don't do all those things simultaneously, we will never get to full employment with our existing business base. We have to do all of those things. And these numbers reinforce this. If you have some question about what the post-pandemic world was going to look like, we're going to tell you every single quarter where we stand. We're not shying away from it. And by the way, this doesn't have anything to do with whether the EDC is responsible for it. We are the entity that is trying to help galvanize the community to work on the things that will deliver the outcome that we need, but we are not responsible for any of it. We didn't make the problems, nor will we solve the problems, but we will hopefully catalyze all the right people to get together so that collectively we can make progress on this together. We are in a battle like every other community in America to figure out whether we can get our shit together and do this better than others. If we don't, we will languish. We are already old. We are already diminishing in population. But we have an opportunity, if we organize ourselves around some of this information, to out-execute our neighbors and others and create the texture for a long-term sustainable economy. Now, if you look at housing, and it was alluded to in the last conversation, this picture is not getting better. The total number of closed home sales dropped in the last quarter to 152 in the entire Warren County. But if you look at the box next to it, which shows 2021, there were 1,000 closed home sales in Warren County last year. That tells you that the amount of housing capacity that we have that is transferring is getting smaller and smaller. You alluded to it earlier, Supervisor McGowan. You know, the pricing continue to go up, but the new listings continue to go down. There's less than 200 listings in all of Warren County right now. It's just, it can't meet our needs if we do not figure out how to expand this capacity. I was out at North Creek for what I would consider to be a mixed reaction with the community as I tried to help them grapple with not only these trends, but the things that are happening uniquely in their own community. And here's one of the things I told them. When you get done dealing with the effects of whatever the reassessment of your properties are in North Creek, they're going through a reassessment exercise there. Not unlike what Glens Falls has recently gone through and other communities continue to go through. But when you go through that, regardless of whether the value of your home, you were effectively able to grieve it back down, the following year, it's going to go up by another 12%. That is not going away until we build more capacity. Every home in Warren County is going to continue to grow at double digits a year in terms of its value. We cannot turn this spigot off. The demand for this housing will only be alleviated if we get behind increasing the amount of available housing. And these numbers are just going to continue to paint that picture for us. Now, there's a lot more data that goes behind this. And in fact, we go through this a lot in some of the forums that we have specific to housing that include some of the people that are in the room from the county and some of the communities as well. But this month, we actually start organizing around at least ideas that we would like to present to you. Ideas like, are deed restrictions an appropriate tool to use here? In other words, would we want to incent homeowners in some way to make housing available to residents versus outsiders? And if we did, how would we do it? Would we want to take some of the monies that come to us from vehicles like Airbnb and short-term rentals, which are also part of this housing demand, and target that towards specific housing development that might help increase our capacity? Are there things we can do that would encourage developers who are not here to look at the potential that exists? How would we make shovel-ready sites, which we've tended to think about for factories, much more of available for developers of housing? All of these things we have to at least consider, and we're trying to work out the mechanics of how something like that would work. And as these groups start to develop these ideas, they will be funneled into this group and hopefully into the larger context of the county, infrastructure to figure out which ones make sense. But these are good problems to have relative to our neighbors. There are still communities in New York. We are probably one of the 5 leading counties in terms of our employment rate. So there are still counties that languish in the post-pandemic world of getting their workforce back to work. Liza and her team have done a fantastic job of optimizing what we have. We got to get some more in here if we're going to continue to grow this place. So if you want to go through more details of that, we'll be happy to do that, one-on-one with any of you. We'll also be probably starting in June, we'll start a public event where we actually go through this scorecard in detail with the press and anybody that wants to cover it, and go through it any level of detail that people want to ask questions on. I also wanted to point out this other format that we use of economic activity in the county. Every one of those dots represents an activity that there are resources that the EDC currently engaged in. Some of that is either a business inquiry that's coming from an existing business or potentially a new business. We've identified where that's occurring. You can see by the dots, there's a fairly healthy amount in the Glens Falls Queensbury corridor, but there's an equal amount outside of it. That's an important thing for us, is to make sure that we're delivering value across the entire body of the county. There's also a series of things that are, infrastructure related that we're supporting, including trying to help North Creek as they approach the question of their potential sewer district. There's still continues to be broadband activity that we work on across the county. We're not done there. We are in a better position than almost all of our neighbors, but we're not done. And any of the detail that you would like about any of these dots, whether they have to do with your community or whether they have to do with a specific topic, we'd be happy to cover that in any amount of detail you want. And the last thing I'd like to mention is just one last push for the fact that even if you cannot go to our luncheon on June 17th, I encourage you to have somebody from your world go. That we're going to have the author, one of the authors of The Demographic Drought, provide, a great deal of context behind many of these things that are driving our housing crisis and our workforce shortage and the aging of our population and many of the problems that we are facing. On June 17th, for the first time in 3 years, the EDC community will get together at the Great Escape, just like we used to in the days of Ed. But the message that's being delivered is universal. It applies to us all. Doesn't matter where you live in the county, doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter what political party you're a part of. Every one of these trends is affecting every single one of us. And getting to know as much as we can about it so that we can help educate and lead our constituencies through this to productive solutions is the challenge of the day, at least for us at the EDC. So that will be the beginning, not the end, of us bringing a very public spotlight to many of these discussions that we've been having with you guys and with others.
Thank you, Jim. Any questions or comments?
17th, the board meeting?
Good question. The June meeting is an evening meeting, so I think we're in good shape.
Unless it goes long, really long.
Your
It's on the
starts
15th of
11.
June, by the way.
Yes.
So with that, thank you, Jim. We have 15 minutes to get through two other discussions. Liza's up next because she had such a glowing review
Where
from
would we be
Supervisor
without
Hogan.
Liza? I don't even want to imagine.
I go to the podium.
Good morning, everyone. I have several resolution requests this morning, so I'll move quickly because I know we're short on time. The first one is for our new contract with New York State Department of Labor. As you may or may not recall, our federal grant requires that we are co-located with Department of Labor so we don't duplicate services. So we have a new rental agreement. You have it in your packet for the next 3 years, and it's pretty much the same amount we've been paying. It's only a few $100s less.
Motion to bring this to the table. Supervisor McGowan, second by Supervisor McDevitt. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Oh, and is this at the same rate as previous contract?
Yeah, it's actually a little bit less
Okay.
now.
She negotiated hard for us, Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you. And then also just to review, is this a good space for you to work out of?
We are blessed to have the space that we have in the Warren County Career Center in the Travelers Building. I encourage anybody to come visit anytime. I love our space.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions, discussions? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
It passes. Liza?
Thank you. The next two resolution requests, if you want to combine them or not, it's up to the committee, is to accept funds. So we did receive an employment recovery national dislocated worker grant. While we do have funding that supports dislocated workers, this grant has more leeway with giving that money to people who need support for employment, who've been impacted by the pandemic. So that's the first one. And the second one, we just got our Tanf allocation for our summer youth employment program for this summer.
A motion for both?
For both.
Supervisor Strauss, second by Supervisor McGowan. Any discussion?
I have a quick question.
Absolutely. Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you. Hi, Liza. Is the summer youth program, was it expanded at all or is it the same?
Great question. It's only a few $1,000s more. We are getting around 112,000 this year. It was 110,000 last year. We rarely spend all of those funds every summer, but this summer we have double the number of youth and work sites.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Hearing seeing none, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hearing none, that motion passed. Liza?
Thank you. The fourth one is to fill a vacant position for office specialist. We actually created this position prior to the pandemic. but then I didn't fill it because we closed for COVID and worked remotely. And now we need additional help back in our resource room, the main area of our entry. Because our receptionist is a DOL worker, we actually need a county worker with them as well, because my staff have been having to cover and support the front, which takes them away from their other duties. This does fit into my budget. It is still on the books. I just am looking for committee approval to fill that position.
Motion by Supervisor McGowan, a second. Supervisor Hogan, any question, comments? Seeing none and hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Say aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Supervisor?
Thank you. And the last resolution request is to add a new position for a job coach for our summer program. So an ARPA request was submitted in January 2022 for a temporary summer employee for the next 4 summers that we can use ARPA money to support the summer youth employment program. And Civil Service has requested that we have a resolution for this, no matter how it's funded, whether it's funded through TANF, ARPA, or, you know, if county funds, however it's paid for, we need to have a resolution for it. So I do have a draft job description for the job coach for the summer, temporary summer worker. And HR is working on a estimated salary for this position that we would have at Personnel Committee if this committee approves to move forward with this.
We need a motion to bring this forward for discussion. Supervisor Hogan, Supervisor McDevitt on the second. Any questions, comments? Supervisor Leggett.
Thanks. Why ARPA funds?
So great question. We were thinking about workforce challenges and particularly that the pandemic has created. And we know we need to keep youth engaged who are still struggling from the pandemic. That's the generation that has struggled the most. It will help build their job readiness skills. It will keep them from making risky decisions. I do feel like the goal of getting more youth involved in our workforce is a response to COVID impacts.
Thank you.
Supervisor Stroud.
Liza, is this a full year job?
No, it would just be for the summer, every summer for the next 4 summers. But the other reason this is really important this summer, if we're able to make it happen, we have more youth applicants this year with special needs. And so I have a coordinator and a youth counselor, and we're going to need more staff to support the 40 youth in summer youth employment program this year.
And how much will it pay?
The HR director said she's reviewing this and she was happy to, we will have that for the Personnel Committee if this is approved. The concept and the need in this time sensitive manner. I was just trying to see if we had support. Yes.
Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you say this has also been budgeted for?
I have not budgeted for this. That's why I put in an ARPA request for it in January. And we're now almost 5 months later.
Any other questions, comments? So hearing none, so I'm going to call the question. Any those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes.
Lastly, I just wanted to share some updates about where we are with workforce and then really my vision for our department moving forward. Amanda, if you're able to pull up the slide. You heard from Mr. Siplon and others. That is correct. We're still at about 4% unemployment rate. And summer really started, right? It felt like summer last weekend. Businesses are still really struggling to fill those positions, but we're doing everything we can day to day. I do want the committee to know that our Career Center is fully reopened. We were on an appointment-based system, and now we are fully reopened for walk-ins. We are not able to advertise that on social media at this time at the request of DOL, but word of mouth and other advertisements are fine. So I do really want the full committee to know that. And we're still really pushing the hospitality program, training program. We're working closely with SUNY and BOCES. We're also trying to make sure that youth are involved in a number of ways, not just the summer youth employment program, but we are looking at building robotics programs with the school districts and maybe having business sponsors. There are a number of initiatives happening out of our office. But I wanted the committee to have a better idea of where our money goes from our funding. And so you can see on the screen, this is the full budget of a Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which completely funds my department, the $673,000. You will see 76% of that budget goes towards salaries and fringe. And that fringe as well includes 9 people on our retirement list, and 7 of those didn't work under this federal grant. So think about over $1,800 a month, over $20,000 a year that is going towards retirees, that we could be using that money for training programs or other services for job seekers. I wasn't sure if everybody on the committee or the board was aware of these numbers, and this is why I really wanted to share it. You also see the training budget is only 11% of my full budget. Pretty much whatever we have left after overhead expenses, salaries, and fringe is what we have for training. So this year that was $50,000 plus allowances. An allowance could be if somebody needs $150 pair of work boots in order to start a job. We can sponsor them if they qualify for our program. So you're really looking at only about, $73,000 for training for a program year. And I really wanted the committee to be aware of this so that you know that this is not meeting our current and future workforce needs. Federal money and state money that has supported workforce programs over the last 2 decades has declined by about 40%. And this is no exception. If you look at our budget 10, 20 years ago, it was much greater than this, but we have greater needs now than ever before. Next slide, please. So this is how our money is spent. This grant, if I could, if PowerPoint or Canva would have let me, I would have put red tape all over each one of these categories because there is so much red tape around how we can spend this money. So we have 4 buckets that our funds go to. So administrative costs, and this is really the services, how they're delivered through administrative costs, supporting dislocated workers, people who lost their job at no fault of their own, adults and youth. And on that last column, you will see 75% of that youth budget has to go to out of school youth. When we know in-school youth right now needs so much career services. And we need to be prepping them for the workforce because we have our aging population and baby boomers retiring. This is another thing that the state has limited with us. 26 other states around the country, I believe it's 26 other states, do not quote me directly, are allowed to flex their youth dollars to use for in or out of school youth. In the last few weeks, the 33 Workforce Development Board directors from across our state had a meeting with New York State Department of Labor to ask for flexibility with the youth dollars, and that request was denied. So this is another great need that I am not able to fill. We do what we can with the confines of this budget and of this grant. But I really wanted you to know the limits that I have with this federal grant to meet the needs of our community, and particularly our youth who I continue to share. I am very concerned about them, and if we don't invest in them now, we will pay for it later through social services, criminal justice, et cetera. Next slide, please. This is my current org chart. So yes, I have DOL colleagues with me that are not on this org chart. These are our county employees. So myself and the fiscal manager, we're not doing direct services to clients, right? My E&T coordinator does limited service to clients. I have 1 youth counselor, and then I have 2 counselors who work with adults and dislocated workers. They also work with social services. We have required employment classes. This is not enough. And so I graciously thank you for approving the support this morning to hire more people. But really, I need even more. So we long-term to address the demographic drought that Mr. Siplon shared, which I did not even know he was going to be mentioning those things today, but he set me up nicely. We will need to have more support, and I cannot afford it in this current budget. WIOA, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act that funds my office, is currently up for reauthorization this year. We are waiting to see if that will happen and how much will be in there. So this was one thing I wanted you to consider as the committee thinks about long-term support of workforce development, which is our economy. And next slide. So I am asking that the committee starts thinking about renaming and evolving my department and function and title to the Office or the Department of Workforce Development. This is happening across the state and across the country. When people hear the Employment and Training Office, they think we're the unemployment office. We're not the unemployment office. Then they wonder, do you do employment and training for the county, or do you do employment and training for the community? And then we have to go and explain. But when you hear workforce development, everybody knows what that means. So I'm asking for the committee to just think about evolving my department. It has had other names in the past as well. I believe it used to be called Manpower in the 70s and 80s. And with this vision and function, the first column is we would continue to do what we already do. Serving those populations, the Workforce Development Board requirements. There's a lot of documentation that has to go to the Workforce Development Board, meetings with them, and then the performance indicators from the New York State Department of Labor. All of those things would stay the same because we would continue to receive that funding, hopefully, if reauthorized. This current system is, our workforce system is reliant on a federal grant and a tri-county system. And Saratoga County is our fiscal agent. So I just want to remind everybody of that. The second column is what we can continue to do to support the community and economic development. These are things you already see me doing because we needed to, but they are not in my job description, nor are they a WIOA requirement. So all the things we've been doing around childcare and transportation, none of those things are really measured by New York State Department of Labor. Industry-specific initiatives. Very often we are pushing people to college, but we know that there are trades programs here and industries here who need workers who don't require a college degree. The Capital Region BOSI's just did a signing day a couple of weeks ago to celebrate youth who were going right into the workforce out of high school. I would love to do that here as well. Continue to address the barriers, building partnerships and programs just like we are with the Salvation Army and other organizations to help people with barriers to employment get back into the workforce and get some experience. And then, like I mentioned, the pipeline from schools to jobs. We really need somebody who is designated to work with both the school districts and the local largest employers. I would love it if it's somebody who has labor union experience to help our young people explore careers and gain experience in our local businesses. When we did the high school job fairs, summer jobs, the last 2 summers, a lot of those students told us, I didn't know these jobs existed. It is our job to make sure our students know about all of the opportunities that are here in our community for them. And then the last column, you'll see, I have been supporting our departments in our county, and I would love to continue to do that to make sure that our workers are also trained, upskilled, and because that will help us retain our workers. We have several partnerships between departments that support not only employees, but also who they serve. And then I love being a problem solver and helping my colleagues solve problems around workforce challenges. When we're able to do that, we are more likely to have happy employees at the county, and we are more likely to retain employees. And I want to make sure that we remain that we are a competitive employer and that we remain that way. We've heard many conversations from department heads and others that we are not a competitive employer right now. And I really want to support to get us there. I've shared a lot of information. I know we're short on time, but I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Liza. I've been in total support of this. Liza makes many people's jobs in this community very easy. because she's like the Energizer Bunny, running around helping solve problems. Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you. Liza for president. But no, the DOL, I've heard that the DOL a couple times. Now, why are they holding back on opening up when we're ready to go?
Yeah, great question.
Now, excuse me, just so everybody knows, am I correct? This is the Department of Labor.
Yes, New York State Department of Labor.
Oh, New York State, all right.
So there are several reasons. There are so many career centers like mine across the state, and they just started piloting reopening them. We were one of 10 selected about 2.5 weeks ago to reopen, which I was excited about. And then more started to open this week. There were concerns around angry people around unemployment coming to the office. There were concerns definitely around mental health. There are concerns about capacity, particularly in the cities that serve more people. And then also there were some, I think, some union concerns. So if we are advertising that some centers are open and others are not, there were some union concerns from the state with their union with that publicity. So those are some of the main reasons, but I'm sure there are also more that I'm unaware of.
So this is the program we're putting on, that you're sponsoring and putting together, and they're concerned for you? Or is it, could be the possibility they just don't have the staff to make sure you're going to do an excellent job?
They know we're doing a great job because our data that they see from the database shows that. We also had a visit from them a couple weeks ago, and they were very impressed with our center. I think it's really about consistency across the state, right? Making sure that every career center has the support that they need to be successful and the security. So my building has security downstairs. And then we also, the state gave us a security officer upstairs. So, and then I ordered two-way radios for all this, for the leadership and the security officers. So I feel very safe and secure in our career center, but I can't say the same for the rest around the state, of course, and neither can DOL.
And you can't open this up because it has to be through the state.
Right, they own this property and we rent from them. But ours is fully reopened. We just can't advertise it on social media right now, which is why I'm sharing it in this public meeting and hope that the word continues to get out. We are having visitors, but not as many as I would like, especially when we know we have a lot of jobs to fill here.
Thank you.
Supervisor Stroud.
Yes. Liza, you would like to change the name from Career Center to the Department of Workforce Development?
The Warren County Career Center, that name will stay the same. My department is called Employment and Training, and I would like it to be changed to Department of Workforce Development or whatever the committee or board.
So the department, but not the
name of the Career Center.
But because you know the bureaucracy in New York, and you've tried to deal with that when you change something, it becomes a nightmare.
Yep. So it wouldn't be the name of the Career Center, that would stay the same. There are many entities around the state who receive the same funding I do that operate in different ways and have different titles, whether they're on college campuses or career centers like mine.
Okay, thank you.
Any others? Hearing none, seeing one, I'll take an opportunity to make a comment. Liza, as she mentioned, is measured by the Department of Labor on certain metrics. That doesn't really absolutely reflect what our community needs. And Liza's been out banging on bushes and making things happen on those things that the community actually needs instead of the actual metrics. She still is doing the metrics. The issue is that only funding is coming from the state and the federal government. And I believe it's time that we start thinking about adding some additional funding and creating some additional resources. Mr. Moore, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you a little example of Saratoga County and what they've done in the past.
Yeah, Saratoga County they have a fund it's a special fund for the federal money for the workforce development. And since before I got there, which was in 2011, they had been splitting their funding. They have also a portion of the general fund. I looked the other day at their budget to see whether that's still the case, and it is. So out of a budget of about $1.3 million, they're doing over $200,000, which is over 15% from the general fund.
So we're still trying to work through some of the details, but I'm just curious, what's the committee's just feel about some of these changes? Not a commitment yet, but a feel to ask us to continue to move forward with this. Any objections?
No.
Hearing none, seeing none.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, is this about the change in name or funding?
Change in funding, possibly restructure of the employment training and workforce development.
Mhm. You know, finding an appropriate source from the county would be important.
We just need to work through some of those details.
Let's work them.
So, you know, I believe that we'll bring it forward to the committee again in the very near future. Some more details about how this might work. Any other questions for Liza? Seeing none. Liza, thank you.
Chairman and committee.
Wayne, I know you're so experienced and we're 12 minutes beyond our allotted time, and it's not your fault, but the pressure's on.
I can't go back in time, so, you know, I have two requests for committee action. One is the state has announced the CFA, the consolidated funding applications are out there. They are due June 29th. June, actually, July, yeah, I'm sorry, July 29th. And I included in the packet the available funding resources by program area. We'd like authorization to submit applications either for the county or in partnership with local municipalities. As we work out what those may be, we'll come back to committee, but at least we have an authorizing resolution that we would go forward.
Motion by Supervisor McDevitt, second by Supervisor Stroud. Any questions, comments? Supervisor Hogan, is that a question or a second?
No, let's move it forward.
Yep. Any other comments? Moving it forward, Mr. Sipline.
One thing I'd like to mention is that we've been talking with Empire State Development about holding a local workshop so that businesses and municipalities will have direct interaction with them as quickly as we can in early June. We've also been reaching out to businesses that have applied for previous or expressed interest in applying for previous CFAs. So if any of you in your municipalities or in your areas of interest have a need to directly dialogue with the process, feel free to contact us as well as Wayne.
Thank you. So any other discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Wayne?
All right, the next one is the county was awarded funding through the Community Development Block Grant Program. There's the grant number is there. It requires the board resolution to identify a certifying official for the environmental review record. That person, that recommendation is for me to be that person. That is consistent with Resolution 365 of 2021, which authorized me as the certifying official for the previous two grant awards. So it's just carrying forward, but the grantor agency requires a board resolution making that determination. Also a letter from the chairman, and that language is provided what that letter needs to say.
Motion by Supervisor McGowan, second by Supervisor Stroud. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That
Wayne
motion
certifiable.
Yeah. So there's a couple of the things I want to talk about. I know we're running late, but we have been trying to get a senior planner in the office. It's been through 2 cycles of job announcements and there have been 0 interest. And part of that I think is due, it's roughly a $50,000 starting salary. Chemung County is out there at same job, 60,000. Let's see, who else? Chautauqua County, 62,000. Finger Lakes Regional Planning Board, 65,000. Greene County, 55,000. Wyndham Regional Council, 65,000, City of Plattsburgh, 70,000. And we're competing for those same individuals with a $70,000 salary. My recommendation is that we look at a full spectrum of announcements for junior planner, senior planner, assistant county planner 2, which according to the county administrator we had in the table of organization a few years ago. And that we just have to see what's out there, and then we'll make a decision of how we can go forward. But we're not getting zero interest in the current position.
Supervisor Trolley, bring the motion.
Yeah, I'll bring
Motion.
them.
The second,
And
McGowan, thank you.
can I,
Yes, you may.
Wayne, I think 50 is too low. 60 is that what you're suggesting?
Well, it's county grade system, so it's established. I don't know the grade 12, I think.
I'll look it up.
Yeah. So if we've asked to have that reconsidered in the past for a grade change, and it's not been approved,
You know, you can't.
and it's a union position, so yeah.
Wayne, how long have those other positions been open?
When I look at this is through the upstate chapter of American Planning Association, their job board, I see April and May. They usually cut them off after 60 days. Ours is no longer up there. So we had posted on that board. So as their solicitation period ends, they take them off their board.
So we don't know if even those salaries are able to drop.
Correct. I mean, those announcements are still there.
So
Chairman,
Supervisor Hogan,
thank you. Wayne, will raising this one necessitate reevaluation of any of the existing staff salaries?
Well, it's possible. I think we need to take a whole look at the whole structure. And, you know, I think Liza mentioned it, and I think Jim mentioned it, you know, it's to be a competitive employer. I don't want to pick on the town of Queensbury, but, you know, I think there was discussion at the board meeting last Friday about comparing county salaries to local salaries. And I think you'll see a disparity there with Queensbury, with town of Lake George. So I think it's food for thought, and I think it needs to be looked at.
just
Supervisor.
FYI, my people think their salaries are too low too.
So what is the pleasure of the committee? My sense is that everyone else in the organization is saying similar things. We're not being competitive as an employer. And I'm not sure what we do with that. We move it to personnel finance and say we need to try to find a way to fix this. But again, I'm not first in the union.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you. And from yesterday's meetings, there's a recurring theme through here on the need to up salaries. So from last Friday, yesterday, today, and coming into the budget year, I think there's going to be a lot for us to consider as far as the financial responsibility obligations for reallocating and to adjusting our salary figures. Where will that money come from? That's always the big issue. A lot of times it's from the tax we raise through property. The other source is where it comes through on sales tax. That's we need to keep that in mind as our sales tax revenues look really good right now. We have a very big demand for all of those dollars within our county, and to be able to keep the pressure off of increasing our property taxes to our residences. With that said, I'll go on to the question here of the senior planner position. Is that part of the transition plan?
It was in the budget for over a year. We have not been able to fill it. So short answer is sort of. We need it anyway. But, you know, as I've been saying for a number of years, at some point I'm going to exit stage right. And, you know, we can't leave the office with just one person. So the thought was to bring that person on. Then when I do exit stage right, you're going to have to find either another county planner or an assistant county planner, depending on how the office is restructured. when I came to work at Warren County way back when, the office had 3 planners. And right now we have 2. And, I'm going to say more than 60 to 70% of my time is spent on administrative stuff, not on working with communities, not on planning. So really, you're at 1.5 planners. We found before that we kind of divvied up the county. I handled the western side of the county, and somebody else handled the lakeshore communities, and Pat was the director back then, and she handled the city and most of Queensbury. And we kind of geographically became attached to those areas. We really don't do anything for the lakeshore communities. We just don't have the staff. So, I hate to say it, but that's the facts. We still have all the responsibilities under planning referrals. Even though the county got rid of the planning board, section 239 L&M, the general municipal law requires the county to review projects. We're doing 200 to 260 projects a year that we're reviewing for local municipalities for a 239 review. All that stuff goes on no matter what else happens.
So I look at the budget officer, I don't think he's smiling about this, but the planning organization does bring in a lot of grant money to the counties and to some of our municipalities. Supervisor Stroud.
There appears to me to be some immediacy for getting a senior planner, ASAP.
Getting somebody.
But the bigger picture, civil service, union.
Yeah.
Salary structure.
Administrator Moore
Where
might
do
be
we
able
s-
to feed us in with some
Where
information.
is there a place to fast track this, or?
I think so. The way I would look at it, you have the senior planner salary is 50,384. And you don't have much of an ability to deviate from that if somebody's coming in from the outside. If somebody comes from the inside, they would keep their increment. But that salary is going to be 50,384, and I don't think anybody's going to want that salary. I think if there's an expedient way to do this, and it's not realistic to think that you'll get much, that you'll be able to boost that salary higher through a process with the much higher, I should say, through a process with the union. I think the better way to go would be to abolish that position and recreate what was created in the 2020 budget, which is an assistant county planner #2. That's outside the union. We have a lot more flexibility in terms of the dollar amount that we could bring somebody in at. We have the position would start out the way it's currently graded at 63,711, and it tops out at 83,150 currently.
All right, I would support that.
Second
Is that a
that.
motion?
Yeah.
We are a motion. Well,
We're gonna keep that motion going to do something.
What?
I have a question.
Motion for
Yeah.
the motion was for a senior planner. I'm sorry, I'm missing this one too.
But I think I'd like to amend my motion to make it a
Assistant planner #2.
assistant planner #2.
I'll second the amended motion.
I have a question.
And we're deleting the senior planner. That was the motion? All right, Supervisor Hogan.
All right, Wayne?
Wayne, does this help?
Yeah.
Well, for right now, I would prefer to keep the senior planner slot because something may come forward and I don't want to be limited because there's different experience and qualification levels between those two jobs. So if someone does come forward, I'd like to be able to entertain that. But at some point, depending on who applies, if anybody applies, that's when we can make a final decision, I think. That would be my preference.
So to be clear, you want to open it up to this other position, but not delete the senior planner?
That would be my preference right now, because we don't know what's going to happen.
Supervisor McGowan.
So is that possible? Can we do that?
Yeah, well, we could essentially keep the one position, create the other, with the understanding that we're going to fill one or the other and not both. And wouldn't require a budget amendment because we have the 50-something thousand sitting there in the budget that hasn't been touched yet. Yeah, right, either way we would
Yeah,
go.
that's good.
So
Okay.
Supervisor Sproul, you agree with that modification? Supervisor McGowan?
Yep.
All right, so we have a second for the change. Any discussion, further discussion? Hearing seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed?
That helped.
Yes.
Seeing none, hearing none, that motion passes. I guess we're done with the main agenda. Don Lehman, are there any comments?
Hi, Chairman Wild. No, there's no comment on YouTube.
Privilege of the floor. Wayne, one more thing.
One more thing, Pat is online. She's been sitting here. She did a paper on the potential of the county addressing some of the housing needs through a couple different avenues, land bank, a local housing trust. She did a paper. I'd like to be able to distribute that to the full board. I know we're running late, but she's here if you wanted to ask any questions about it or hear a 2 to 3 minute spiel, but that's up to you.
2 to 3 minutes. I'm already trouble for being over, so I'll take 2 or 3 minutes to avoid waiting a month. Pat, you're on the clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would prefer that the information be circulated, which is a paper that I did on a creation of a local housing trust. I've been following other counties in the state, and there appears to be some movement in going forward with this. So you will receive that particular information piece, and you could review it at your leisure, and we could talk about it at another time. The other thing is, I know that we have had an RFP in the works now for a while. The agency, the Division of Housing, has changed a bit on how they review the proposals, and I've submitted to them they want a outline of all the elements to be created. And we're one of only 4 organizations in the state that were funded on this. And their appeal to our proposal was the fact that we had a marketing demand analysis piece in it. And their intent is to utilize whatever we prepare and promote that as an effort with other counties and communities in the state. So you'll get that outline as well. So we could talk about it next time. But thank you for the opportunity to address this today.
Questions for Pat from the committee?
Thank you, Pat.
Pat, I think it's awesome. We're moving forward with housing. I'm frustrated that it takes so long, but having built a house or two, I know it takes a while to get something done when you're talking construction. So whatever we can do to move housing along quicker, Pat, please let me know if there's something we can do. We'll make it happen best I can.
Thanks, sir.
So with that, privilege of the floor. Seeing none, and call a motion to adjourn. McGowan, Stroud, thank you very much.